Yes, I am.
Great. TJ's just joined us, so welcome, TJ. Ifman's joined us. Welcome, Ifman.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
All right, Nicole, we're going to get going. So I want to welcome everybody. I'm Doug Peterson, Executive Director of Saskatchewan Soccer. I want to thank everybody for being on the call. We have a smaller group with us tonight, which we're grateful for everybody being here, so we appreciate that. Logistics are the same, so Nicole, you want to throw that up? So even though it's a smaller group, we just ask you to use the comment box for any chat items you want to get towards us, and raise your hand, and Leanne will be monitoring those items and letting us know as we get into the conversation here if there's people who have comments to make. And certainly feel free to jump in as you need to. It's, again, a smaller group tonight. So with that, I will get to the agenda. We're going to look at the return to soccer plan. We did some fairly significant updates on Friday. Just a reminder of a few other items, and then we'll have obviously take questions throughout. So again, I want to thank everybody, and I'd like to introduce President Lisa Bagaluri to bring the greetings tonight.
Thanks, Doug. So on behalf of the board and staff, I want to welcome all of our member organization representatives on the call tonight. Last week, SSA staff facilitated a meeting with the representatives from the business response team, Sask Health, the Ministry of Parks, Culture and Sport, SaskSport, and the Fall-Winter Contact Sports to gain some further clarity on guidelines for sport. It was a productive meeting, and the return to soccer plan and frequently asked questions were updated with information that came out of that meeting. Tonight, we'll review those updates. So I want to thank the SSA staff for initiating, organizing this meeting. Today was likely a busy day for many of you and rest of our membership with the first day of school. The return to school is an important step as Saskatchewan continues to reopen. We hope everyone stays safe and healthy as kids, teachers, and school staff go back to school. Safety remains our top priority. Sport impacts many people and has a role to play in keeping our communities safe. We continue to be here to support your work, especially as we draw closer to the indoor season. Thank you again for continuing to join us on these calls and for all of your hard work. With that, I'll hand it back over to Doug, and he'll go through the rest of our evening's agenda.
Thank you, Lisa. I see Amanda's joined us, so welcome, Amanda. And also thanks to all the staff that are on the call tonight. And we have Lisa and Steve Patton from the SSA board, along with the member organization. So thank you. Nicole, we can head into the return to soccer plan, and we'll get some updates. Let's jump over to the intent page. So yeah, the soccer plan was updated on Friday, and in the last 2 weeks, we've been working quite diligently to try to get the attention of the business response team, and it worked very well for us. Along with some of our other sport colleagues, were able to facilitate a meeting last Wednesday. And as we announced last Friday, there were some, I think, significant changes to the guidelines, which are helpful. There's still a lot of work to do, and I think there's a number of questions that are still on the table that I was actually hoping for a call today from the head of the business response team. But one of the things our efforts have done in the last 2 weeks is get us much closer to the decision makers at the business response team. And with all the sports, we were able to talk directly from representatives from Sask Health, which was really, really nice. The Ministry of Parks, Culture and Sport, SaskSport, Sask Health, and the business response team had not met previously. So we were pleased that we were able to bring those groups together and have some productive conversations. So Nicole, let's jump to the next slide, please. One of the things I want to do before I turn it over to Nicole is just remind everybody about intent. So whenever possible, we need to maintain safety as our top priority, as we said. One of the things that's very clear in speaking to the business response team and their leadership is that The medical authorities make the decisions. I think what we've done in the last 2 weeks is given us some ability to connect directly to those medical people, sort of to help them to understand the nature of sport better. And I think some of the amendments that were made came a result of that work we did. And they understand a little bit more about sport and how it impacts the guidelines. So some of those guidelines were changed. We also know that there is much work to do, and we'll talk more about that, and I'm sure you guys will have questions, so I'll get into that later. But they spoke quite a bit with the folks from health on the phone last week about the intent of the guidelines. And so obviously some pretty simple stuff. I think we all understand these, but it's certainly worth our time to reinforce. So whenever possible, we should be limiting the number of people we come in contact with. And of course, not only in our daily lives, but in sport, and with the reopening of school, that's going to have an impact. So also another principle is we should stay close to home, limiting travel and thus limiting contact and exposure. As we mentioned, school will challenge the COVID numbers. And so sport will have a role to play in keeping people safe. And because of the nature of sport and the number of individuals we impact province-wide, if we operate safety, I think we'll be okay. But if we take it too far, then I think it'll become a concern for health, and that combined with the return to school, we're concerned that maybe the guidelines may have to be further restricted back a few steps. So we're hoping that we can avoid that. So there are some guidelines that are under review right now. We were hoping to have a call today to update one of them, but we'll comment further on that as it gets going. There's a couple on the table. This notion of changing mini leagues between the seasons is still on the table, and we could talk more about that. And also the size of mini leagues is another one we're really hoping that they might consider changing. So with that, I think I just, again, I'll turn it over to Nicole, and she'll deal with the specific questions, and we'll go from there. All right, Nicole, you're up.
Thanks, Doug. So I'm going to go through each of the updates that we announced on Friday. So the first one is, can coaches and volunteers participate in more than one mini league? And the business response team, we previously said no, but the business response team confirmed that yes, they can, only under the following circumstances. So if the coach maintains 2 meters social distancing at all times and wears a non-medical mask, or if the coach cannot maintain social distancing at all times, they must wear a medical or surgical or procedural mask. Coaches that can't wear a mask or follow those above requirements would have to be considered part of the 15 people numbers of the mini league. So next one, very similar. Can a referee participate in more than one mini league? And again, under the same two circumstances. So if they can maintain 2 meters social distancing at all times and wear a non-medical mask, or if they can't maintain social distancing, they have to wear a surgical or procedural mask. So it's highly recommended that referees only participate in one mini league. Our soccer officials are considered highly active. They run with the players, and therefore they might have difficulty wearing a mask. If your member organization does decide to go the route of them wearing masks, it's important that you recognize that their abilities are going to be limited. So you can't expect them to have the same performance or do the same things as they would if they weren't wearing a mask. And then also something to consider is that they wouldn't be able to blow a whistle. They couldn't run with a whistle in their mouth and wear a mask at the same time. So there are solutions to that, and some other sports are using them, such as electronic whistles. And then again, referees, along with coaches, also need to continue to practice best practices. And so that includes not touching the equipment with their hands, maintaining social distance during their pregame and postgame routines. The next one, can a participant coach / referee in a mini league and play in another one? And the answer is yes, if the requirements in the previous two questions are met. So if they're coaching with a mask refereeing with a mask, and then they can also be involved as a player. And can we separate a full pitch into half, quarters, or thirds and run our mini leagues with 30 participants on a field within the smaller field settings? So those of you with larger facilities would run into this. We ran into this in outdoor, dividing some fields in half. So the business response team has confirmed that a field can be split into more than one field of play. However, there should be no opportunity for groups to commingle. So you could use barriers between the fields, separate entrances, have staggered start times so those groups never commingle. And there should be more than 2 meters between those groups. So with outdoor, we said 5 meters, and we said they had to be part of the same mini league. That's not the case anymore. And member organizations also need to be aware of their specific facility guidelines and adhere to those guidelines. So these guidelines don't supersede whatever you receive from your facility. You need to make sure you follow those as well. And then for maximum field of play, how is field of play determined? So the business response team has confirmed that 30 is now the number of people on the field. Whereas outdoor, we were counting everyone at the field, including people on the bench. That is no longer the case. It's 30 on the field. So you could have players, team staff on the bench. The mini league size is still 50, so that kind of limits what you could do, but you could have 11v11 games with this now. It's kind of late with indoor coming up, but there's that possibility there. You could have a 3-division team or something like that. But it's also important that you're aware of your field size when doing this as well. You don't want to overcrowd a small field just because you can. That would obviously increase your risk. And organizations and participants travel and join with neighboring communities. So I know this is a big one for some of you on the call tonight. Intra-provincial for sport is now allowed under these 2 conditions. So if insufficient numbers do not allow for mini leagues to be formed locally, and the distance between communities is reasonable. So that doesn't mean you can travel across province to play another community, but it does allow neighboring communities that don't have the numbers within their own communities to form a league. And it's important to note that tournaments are still not allowed.
Nicole, there's a couple of questions. Do you want to keep going or take them now? There's a couple hands up.
Yeah, maybe I'll just finish up here and then we'll go through the questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect. So can a player participate in more than one SSA mini league? So I know this is also a big one for some of you on the call tonight. The BRT reiterated that this is discouraged, but they also confirmed that this is not prohibited in the guidelines for sport. So it is possible. Ultimately, your member organization is responsible for providing a safe environment for its participants, and allowing them to participate in more than one league will increase your risk. So your board and your organization needs to recognize that if that is what you decide to do going forward. And then can mini leagues be adjusted and reformed after a 14-day period? So this one is still up for discussion and no change has been made yet. So we are continuing to seek clarification on this. And then the last one, and then we'll go to questions. Why aren't unsanctioned sports held to the same standard? So soccer, along with our other sport colleagues, have concerns that non-sanctioned sports aren't following the same standards and that participants might leave our sport organizations to go to non-sanctioned sport. The BRT confirmed that those sport organizations and those groups are required to follow the same guidelines, and how those guidelines are enforced is if they're reported to the business response team. And then the business response team tries to work with those groups through education. And with that, we will go to questions.
Okay, TJ had his hand up first, so go ahead.
Hey, Nicole, just have a quick question about the referees. Can have one particular referee ref in two different mini leagues in two different member organizations?
Yes, they can if they follow those guidelines that were mentioned.
Just a mask. Okay.
Just,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna jump back to that slide so we can get back there to the specifics.
Yeah, so they either need to wear a non-medical mask and practice 2 meters of social distancing, or wear a surgical or procedural mask.
Thank you.
No problem.
Chad, you can go ahead.
Okay, I've got two questions. Curious about the distance of travel. So is like Swift Current and Moose Jaw, is that a reasonable distance to travel?
So that we're leaving up to the member organizations to determine what you deem reasonable. So if there's no other competition opportunities closer to you and that is where you need to go to travel, I would say that that would be a reasonable distance.
Okay, I just like for people like us, I see Melford's on here as well. Like it's pretty hard for us to create mini leagues within our city. And so we're gonna have to be able to travel a bit to be able to do so. I'm just wondering how far is too far, sort of thing. So if we had, say, a couple different communities meet in the middle, that would be okay.
Nicole, I'll jump in on that one.
Yeah.
So in discussing this with the business response team, again, note the two criteria. So you jump to that, Nicole, that slide. First, what they're saying is that if there's 50 kids locally, you should play locally. But they want kids to have access to, the healthy benefits of sport. But what the business response team is they're kind of doing us a favor. Sometimes the more questions they ask, the more difficult the answers become. So they are putting some faith in the sports to make good decisions. So the scenario that you're asking about might be perfectly good for Swift and Moose Jaw, but in other communities, if there's groups of 50 that can be maintained locally, then that travel shouldn't be occurring. So the point is, we're not just traveling for the sake of competition. Competition is supposed to occur locally in this framework, but they will allow the judgment. So each scenario for Melford or PA or any member has to be determined, and ultimately, if there was enough members locally, then if you were to ask the business response team, their answer would be, well, you should play local, right?
Yes.
And so they are giving some discretion. So there's no straight answer to that, Chad.
Okay. And I have another question, and it's about out of jurisdiction registrations. We've got some people that would like to join the Celtic program in Moose Jaw. Some of our older kids we don't have enough to play youth, but we could potentially do a youth and adult house league, which would still be like under 30 for sure. Are you able to register in a different jurisdiction and be registered in your home jurisdiction?
So Nicole, do you want to try that, or?
So they would play in two mini leagues,
It would
essentially?
essentially be too many leagues. It just wouldn't be within the same city.
Okay, so again, the two mini leagues isn't prohibited, but again, it's not encouraged. So it would be recommended that they would do that. And I would say both member organizations should be aware that they're in more than one organization and okay with that risk. But yeah, if there's an opportunity in Moose Jaw that the player doesn't have Swift Current, this guideline would apply to individual players as well. So that player could travel to play.
It's just
All right,
important to
thank you.
understand the risk, Chad, right?
Oh, I get it. I'm a principal. I've been living
Oh yeah.
in the school piece, so I
Yeah.
understand that.
Well, I just think it's good for us to say it out loud, right? The more access we provide, if there are problems, then the more mini leagues and more member organization programs that will get shut down.
Yeah, no, that makes
So,
sense.
yeah, so each group sort of has to weigh that. And because the BRT, they're quite adamant, they didn't want to give precise answers. Now, if you were to ask, you might get a precise answer, right? And that's why we've had some confusion the previous weeks between sports. People are asking very precise questions. They're getting precise answers, and then they're finding out another sport got a different answer. So it was interesting to have health and BRT on the phone, both saying the same thing, and they don't want to define it, but they do want us to remember the intent and the guidelines and those principles of safety. So.
Okay, but in terms of ramp, like if someone registers in 2 different jurisdictions, is that fished out, or like are they able to do that?
Yes, you can. And again, it will be determined by where you register first or what your home region is. And Eden would have a better answer than me on that. But yeah, you can do that. So.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Amanda.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Nicole. I just wanted to clarify or confirm. Maybe I misheard you, but can you confirm whether or not coaches who are coaching or participating in more than one mini league, whether or not they need to be included in that number of 50 if they are wearing the mask at all times?
If they are wearing a mask or following either one of these circumstances, then they are not in the mini league number. But if they cannot wear a mask, then they are part of the mini league number.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We've got a question from TJ in the chat here. Can a referee participate in 2? Oh, we already answered that one. Sorry. Okay. Do you have any other questions in the chat box, Leanne, on your side?
No.
Perfect. If there's no more questions, we will move on. And I will hand it over to Marcus to talk about Coaches Week.
Thanks, Nicole. Hey, everybody. I'll keep it quite brief in regards to this. This is some of the things we anticipate most of you have probably already seen. But coming up soon, Coaches Week, National Coaches Week, September 19th to 27th. NCCP is putting on a lot of free courses, coaching courses online. So it's some opportunities to take advantage of that, which is really good. In addition to that, there's also the sport NCCP's Sport Leadership Conference that's coming up at the end of October, and there's free registration for that as well too, which obviously it'll be online, but it is something that's quite a big program from year to year at that one, so that could be something to take advantage of as well too. Also, we've got our female mentorship program. We've posted out some details on social media and on our website. So if you have anybody who's, sort of meets the criteria there for that, or interested, or has more questions, or if any of you guys have more questions, we'd be happy to help discuss that. But it's a new initiative that we're doing, and it's quite exciting, and it's quite flexible in terms of what we can provide for the potential candidates on that as well too. So applications are due by September 11th, so there's not a whole lot of time there for getting any applicants in. So if you know anybody who's thinking about it or interested, please encourage them to apply there. And then lastly, just a reminder, we are running a C license starting September 17th and a B license, which starts on September 24th. These will both be online. The on-field portions will be scheduled sometime in the spring, hopefully, knock on wood, that is able to do that. The C license online is asynchronous, so coaches can connect with the material at any time and go through the course as they please. There'll be some networking opportunities, but ultimately they'll be able to do all the online workshops on their own with that. This CSAB license, part 1, that will be a mix of asynchronous and synchronous. We'll be looking to have each Thursday of the 24th and then into October, Thursday evenings with an hour to an hour and a half sessions each Thursday night until the end of October. So that's a little bit of an update on that B license there. But again, that'll be online, and then the on-field will take place in September. And then the last one, another opportunity we've been shared with virtual workshop series. This is another one for females interested in being part of the game or coaching and connecting. It's a real good opportunity, and that is for September 15th and 29th and the 13th as well. So if you're interested in that, you can check out SAS Sport for more details there with that. And that's it for me. Here's some details on the events and deadlines that you can take back to your members.
Thanks, Marcus.
Perfect. So just a couple important deadlines to note. September 30th is the MAP grant follow-up deadline. So if you need an extension, it's important that you request that before the deadline date. And if you require support, it's important that you ask before the deadline date as well, because I might not be able to help you if you phone me the day of. And then also on September 30th is the final outdoor register report and payment deadline date. And then, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if there's any other questions from anybody, Nicole, for tonight, obviously, just let us know and raise a hand if there is. I think it's an interesting time for us. I think we'll all be watching the next 2 to 3 weeks very closely with the return to school and what impact that has on sport. We hope that everything goes well. Just before the call started, Steve Patton was talking about first day at school today, and he said the kids were marvelous, which they certainly are, but it'll be a challenging time for everybody. But if there's any other questions or comments, please shout them out before we bring this call to a close. Cole, anything from you then?
No, I am good.
So I think we'll try to continue our meeting. So if you want to jump back there. So I think we'll stay with the second Tuesday, 8 o'clock. So our next one will be October 13th. Obviously, if something occurs that is of value or of significant, we will let people know and call another call if we need to. But we're pleased that there was some progress at BRT, and we hope that there can be some more in the next week or so. But we will certainly keep you posted. So I think if there's no other questions, we'll just, Amanda's got her hand up. So go ahead, Amanda.
I just want to thank SSA staff for all your efforts with the BRT. I think it's huge, the progress you guys have made. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's appreciated. It was good to get directly to their executive director. He's been a very accommodating man. I've probably talked to him at least 10 times on late nights and weekends and all kinds of stuff. He's made himself available. So thank you. That's appreciated, Amanda.
I just put the link to register for the October meeting in the chat. So if anyone wants to register right away, they can go in and do that.
And do encourage people come back on. I know we're sort of, it feels like we're sort of slowing down and people are just sort of settling into a group. SAS Sport has gone to a much less frequent meetings. Can you still hear me okay, Nicole?
You were cutting out pretty bad for me, but
Yeah,
I think you're okay now.
Sorry, I was just saying SAS Board has gone to less frequent meetings. There is one tomorrow, so we'll see what they have to say and share probably on Friday if there's any news. Canada Soccer has also gone to every 2-week meetings now, and I think that this pace is good for us with a month. But again, we will call another meeting as required if anything major comes up. So I think that's it for me, Nicole.
Perfect. That is it for me as well.
All right. Well, then, thank you, everybody who's been on the call tonight, and please encourage questions to come through. You can send return to play questions into Nicole, and we will continue to try to get conversation with BRT. So much for being on the call tonight. We appreciate it. And good night.
Thanks, Doug.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.